My beloved child, if you were to leave in just a few seconds, you might miss a rare moment, one in which the thin veil between the life you are currently living and the life you were meant to live has just begun to part. Not every day carries a doorway. Not every moment is positioned precisely enough to illuminate the entire journey behind you. Yet, right now, as you are reading these lines, your soul is being held not by curiosity, but by a deeper, quieter pull, one that reaches beyond the familiar habit of scrolling past that you know so well. You did not stop by accident. Something within you recognized that this is not merely content to be consumed, but a point of contact meant to awaken you. Your generation was taught how to live fast, fast to keep up, fast to respond, fast so as not to be left behind. People learn to move through their days the way they move through images, seeing without staying, hearing without truly listening, sensing without allowing feeling to reach its depth. This is often called efficiency, adaptation, strength. But, my child, the soul was not created to live by speed. It was created to live by presence. When you only react without being present, you still exist, but you are not truly alive. You complete what must be done, say what must be said, go where you must go, yet deep within, there is a part of you that never truly arrived. This is the unconscious state that many mistakenly call normal, a life in which people do many things right, yet no longer feel why they are doing them. A constant current of responsibilities, expectations, roles, and schedules sweeps them along like a raging river, until they forget that standing still is even possible. And when the soul is no longer consulted, no longer listened to, it does not die immediately. It simply learns to be silent. It withdraws inward, waiting for a moment strong enough to be called back by name. That is why God rarely intervenes with loud upheavals at the beginning. He does not always use thunder or collapse to shake you. For if your soul is asleep, a great noise will only frighten you. It will not awaken you. Awakening does not come from overwhelm. It comes from a pause deep enough for you to begin hearing yourself again. God often chooses a slower rhythm, a very gentle interruption, something that seems small, a sentence, a glance, a line of text, a sensation you cannot quite name, and places it before you like a mirror, not to make you afraid, but to help you see. This moment is not accidental. It is a delicate intersection between your will and heaven's arrangement. You could have continued scrolling. No one forced you to stay. Yet something within you chose to pause, even if you cannot yet name why. And in that very small choice, a door opened. Heaven does not invade. Heaven waits. Revelation does not impose itself. It responds. When you stop, you are not only ceasing to move with your body, you are allowing your soul to step forward. My beloved child, being touched does not mean being ready. Many people mistakenly believe that feeling stirred is enough, that tears, or a tightening of the heart, means they have understood what God is saying. But a touch is only a knock at the door. It is not the room. It is not the journey. It is merely the invitation. There are those who have been touched many times, yet have never entered. They grow accustomed to the sensation, but fear the change that awakening requires. For when the soul truly awakens, you cannot continue living the same way you did before. Awakening is when you begin to realize that certain parts of your life are running on momentum rather than on life. It is when you look back at familiar choices and ask, did I truly choose this? Or am I simply repeating it? It is when you recognize that your exhaustion does not come from doing too much, but from living disconnected from the source. And this recognition is not given so that you would condemn yourself, but so that you might begin to return. If you feel something within your chest settling rather than flaring, that is a good sign. For heaven is not in a hurry. Heaven does not pull you with pressure. Heaven holds you with truth. And truth does not shout. It stands still until you are ready to look directly at it. This moment does not ask you to understand everything. It only asks you to stay a little longer, long enough for your soul to remember what it feels like to be present. My child, I did not call you out of the current to make you fall behind. I called you to pause so that you would not be swept into a place that does not belong to you. There are paths that appear reasonable, widely accepted, perfectly aligned with what is considered right for this time. Yet they are not aligned with the rhythm I have placed within you. And if you do not stop to listen to that rhythm, you may live your entire life carrying a vague, persistent weariness without ever knowing why. Let this moment do its work. Do not rush to analyze. Do not try to grasp it. Do not label the emotions that are rising. Simply stay. For it is in the staying that what has been asleep within you begins to open its eyes. And when your soul begins to awaken, you will gradually understand that this is not an ending point. This is only the beginning of a journey for which you were called long ago. My beloved child, before I touch your circumstances, before I move people, open a door, or close a season, there is one thing I always restore: first, your attention. Not because I lack the power to change everything in an instant, but because if your attention remains scattered, then even if a miracle occurs, you will perceive it only as a passing event rather than as a calling. Many ask me to change their lives, yet they do not realize that the first thing needing healing is their soul's ability to remain present. Attention is not merely a psychological matter, it is a spiritual asset. Wherever your attention rests, there your soul dwells. This matters more than you realize. Many people are physically present in their homes, their work, their relationships, yet their attention is elsewhere. It is fragmented by worry, by comparison, by invisible noise that pulls them away from the present moment. When attention is scattered, the soul loses the weight needed to discern what I am doing. It is not that I am not speaking, it is that you are no longer there to hear. You must learn to distinguish between curiosity, emotional stirring, and true awakening. Curiosity causes you to pause briefly, then move on in search of the next novelty. Emotional stirring may bring tears and intensity, but if it is not held, it evaporates like morning mist. Awakening is different. It is not loud. It does not demand immediate reaction. Awakening is when your soul begins to perceive not only what is happening around you, but what is unfolding within you. When you are awake, you do not merely ask, "Is this good or not?" You ask, "What is this awakening in me, my child?" Many confuse strong emotion with true encounter. They believe that if they have not felt something deep enough or intense enough, then surely I have not spoken. Yet I spoke to Elijah in a gentle whisper, not in the strong wind or the earthquake. That has never changed. The issue is not the volume of my voice, but the stillness of the listener. When your soul is always chasing what comes next, you will miss what is already before you. There is a reason many people miss the calling, not because they are evil, nor because they lack spirituality. They miss it because they do not stay long enough. They reach the threshold and then turn back. They feel the initial stirring, but when the novelty fades, they return to the old rhythm. They are impatient with silence. They are uncomfortable staying when nothing obvious seems to be happening. Yet, my child, many of the most important works I do in your life are not accompanied by emotional peaks. They unfold quietly, deeply, and require your presence. Remember this: not everyone who is called hears, and not everyone who hears stays. But the one who stays will begin to see. Seeing is not with physical eyes, but through discernment. When your attention is gathered, You begin to recognize patterns you once thought were random. You begin to understand why certain doors closed, why certain relationships could not continue, why the inner promptings within you refused to fall silent. Focused attention reveals the meaning hidden beneath the surface of life. When you truly hear, you are no longer untouched. This is why many fear awakening, even if they cannot name that fear. Awakening does not only bring light, it brings responsibility. Once you recognize something is true, you cannot continue living as though you never knew. No one forces you to act immediately, but your soul will no longer be at peace if you pretend you did not hear. This is not condemnation, it is conscience awakened. Scripture says in Romans 1:3-1:1, "The hour has come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed." This is not about time on a clock, it speaks of an inner state. There is a moment when your soul must awaken not to fear, but to enter maturity. To wake up does not mean you know everything. It means you know you cannot continue to sleep. My beloved child, when I restore your attention, I do not take away your freedom. On the contrary, I return to you your true power of choice. For when you live unconsciously, you merely react, driven by habit and circumstance. But when you are present, you begin to choose to stay, to listen, to not rush, to not turn away from what is opening before you. And each such choice places you more deeply within the trajectory I have set for you. If you sense that you are being drawn into a quieter, a deeper state, where you no longer want to skim past life as you once did, do not be afraid. This is not stagnation. It is a gathering. Your soul is being called back to a central point, and from that center, many things will begin to be rearranged. Not immediately, not noisily, but with certainty. Let your attention return, not to familiar anxieties, but to what is alive within you right now. I do not need you to understand everything. I only ask that you do not turn away too soon. For when you remain long enough, you will realize that I am not only speaking to you, I am preparing you for what you are about to carry. And from the moment you truly hear, you will know that your life no longer belongs to you alone. My beloved child, there are words that do not come to explain everything, but to realign the direction of your entire life. People often want me to speak clearly and completely, step by step, as if life were a map that must be fully drawn before they dare to move. But I do not work that way. If I were to give you every answer from the beginning, you would no longer learn to trust, nor would you have room to grow. A true word does not make you know everything. It places you in the right position. And when you stand in the right position, what you need to know will be revealed in due time. A word from heaven rarely looks like a detailed checklist. It is more like a compass needle suddenly swinging north after years of wandering in circles without realizing it. For a while, everything around you may remain the same: your work, your family, your circumstances, even your unanswered questions. Yet inwardly, something has changed forever. You are no longer moving unconsciously. From that moment on, you live with the awareness that your life has an axis, a direction, a meaning deeper than what the eye can see. And that axis will determine every turn ahead, even when you cannot yet see them clearly. You must understand the difference between being inspired and being revealed to. Inspiration often stirs the emotions. It energizes you briefly, makes you want to change immediately. But if it stops there, inspiration fades when pressure returns. Revelation is different. Revelation does not hurry. It does not necessarily make you feel exhilarated. Sometimes it quiets you, even weighs on your heart. Yet it carries a strange certainty, a deep inner knowing that does not need argument or proof. When you are given revelation, you do not merely feel something, you recognize something about who you are and about how heaven is at work in your life. My child, inspiration may come from many sources, but revelation always draws you closer to me. Inspiration makes you want to act. Revelation transforms your identity. And when identity changes, action follows naturally. That is why many people do many good things and still feel lost they were inspired to do, but never revealed to become. A true word does not first tell you what to do, it tells you who you are. From there, what you do will gradually be put in order. A word also does not come to comfort you in an easy, pleasant sense. On the contrary, it often makes it impossible for you to return to your former state. After you have heard, choices that once felt fine no longer fit, not because they are wrong, but because your inner position has shifted. You begin to feel a new tension, the tension between the life you are living and the life you know you are called to live. And that tension is the engine of growth. Without it, you would settle, my beloved child. If you were to leave in just a few seconds, you might miss a rare moment, one in which the thin veil between the life you are currently living and the life you were meant to live has just begun to part. Not every day carries a doorway. Not every moment is positioned precisely enough to illuminate the entire journey behind you. Yet, right now, as you are reading these lines, your soul is being held not by curiosity, but by a deeper, quieter pull, one that reaches beyond the familiar habit of scrolling past that you know so well. You did not stop by accident. Something within you recognized that this is not merely content to be consumed, but a point of contact meant to awaken you. Your generation was taught how to live fast, fast to keep up, fast to respond, fast so as not to be left behind. People learn to move through their days the way they move through images, seeing without staying, hearing without truly listening, sensing without allowing feeling to reach its depth. This is often called efficiency, adaptation, strength. But, my child, the soul was not created to live by speed, it was created to live by presence. When you only react without being present, you still exist, but you are not truly alive. You complete what must be done, say what must be said, go where you must go, yet deep within, there is a part of you that never truly arrived. This is the unconscious state that many mistakenly call normal, a life in which people do many things right, yet no longer feel why they are doing them. A constant current of responsibilities, expectations, roles, and schedules sweeps them along like a raging river, until they forget that standing still is even possible. And when the soul is no longer consulted, no longer listened to, it does not die immediately. It simply learns to be silent. It withdraws inward, waiting for a moment strong enough to be called back by name. That is why God rarely intervenes with loud upheavals at the beginning. He does not always use thunder or collapse to shake you. For if your soul is asleep, a great noise will only frighten you, it will not awaken you. Awakening does not come from overwhelm, it comes from a pause deep enough for you to begin hearing yourself again. God often chooses a slower rhythm, a very gentle interruption, something that seems small, a sentence, a glance, a line of text, a sensation you cannot quite name, and places it before you like a mirror, not to make you afraid, but to help you see. This moment is not accidental. It is a delicate intersection between your will and heaven's arrangement. You could have continued scrolling. No one forced you to stay. Yet something within you chose to pause, even if you cannot yet name why. And in that very small choice, a door opened. Heaven does not invade. Heaven waits. Revelation does not impose itself. It responds. When you stop, you are not only ceasing to move with your body, you are allowing your soul to step forward. My beloved child, being touched does not mean being ready. Many people mistakenly believe that feeling stirred is enough, that tears, or a tightening of the heart, means they have understood what God is saying. But a touch is only a knock at the door. It is not the room. It is not the journey. It is merely the invitation. There are those who have been touched many times, yet have never entered. They grow accustomed to the sensation, but fear the change that awakening requires. For when the soul truly awakens, you cannot continue living the same way you did before. Awakening is when you begin to realize that certain parts of your life are running on momentum rather than on life. It is when you look back at familiar choices and ask, did I truly choose this? Or am I simply repeating it? It is when you recognize that your exhaustion does not come from doing too much, but from living disconnected from the source. And this recognition is not given so that you would condemn yourself, but so that you might begin to return. If you feel something within your chest settling rather than flaring, that is a good sign. For heaven is not in a hurry. Heaven does not pull you with pressure. Heaven holds you with truth. And truth does not shout. It stands still until you are ready to look directly at it. This moment does not ask you to understand everything. It only asks you to stay a little longer, long enough for your soul to remember what it feels like to be present. My child, I did not call you out of the current to make you fall behind. I called you to pause so that you would not be swept into a place that does not belong to you. There are paths that appear reasonable, widely accepted, perfectly aligned with what is considered right for this time. Yet they are not aligned with the rhythm I have placed within you. And if you do not stop to listen to that rhythm, you may live your entire life carrying a vague, persistent weariness without ever knowing why. Let this moment do its work. Do not rush to analyze. Do not try to grasp it. Do not label the emotions that are rising. Simply stay. For it is in the staying that what has been asleep within you begins to open its eyes. And when your soul begins to awaken, you will gradually understand that this is not an ending point. This is only the beginning of a journey for which you were called long ago. My beloved child, before I touch your circumstances, before I move people, open a door, or close a season, there is one thing I always restore: first, your attention. Not because I lack the power to change everything in an instant, but because if your attention remains scattered, then even if a miracle occurs, you will perceive it only as a passing event rather than as a calling. Many ask me to change their lives, yet they do not realize that the first thing needing healing is their soul's ability to remain present. Attention is not merely a psychological matter, it is a spiritual asset. Wherever your attention rests, there your soul dwells. This matters more than you realize. Many people are physically present in their homes, their work, their relationships, yet their attention is elsewhere. It is fragmented by worry, by comparison, by invisible noise that pulls them away from the present moment. When attention is scattered, the soul loses the weight needed to discern what I am doing. It is not that I am not speaking, it is that you are no longer there to hear. You must learn to distinguish between curiosity, emotional stirring, and true awakening. Curiosity causes you to pause briefly, then move on in search of the next novelty. Emotional stirring may bring tears and intensity, but if it is not held, it evaporates like morning mist. Awakening is different. It is not loud. It does not demand immediate reaction. Awakening is when your soul begins to perceive not only what is happening around you, but what is unfolding within you. When you are awake, you do not merely ask, "Is this good or not?" You ask, "What is this awakening in me, my child?" Many confuse strong emotion with true encounter. They believe that if they have not felt something deep enough or intense enough, then surely I have not spoken. Yet I spoke to Elijah in a gentle whisper, not in the strong wind or the earthquake. That has never changed. The issue is not the volume of my voice, but the stillness of the listener. When your soul is always chasing what comes next, you will miss what is already before you. There is a reason many people miss the calling, not because they are evil, nor because they lack spirituality. They miss it because they do not stay long enough. They reach the threshold and then turn back. They feel the initial stirring, but when the novelty fades, they return to the old rhythm. They are impatient with silence. They are uncomfortable staying when nothing obvious seems to be happening. Yet, my child, many of the most important works I do in your life are not accompanied by emotional peaks. They unfold quietly, deeply, and require your presence. Remember this: not everyone who is called hears, and not everyone who hears stays. But the one who stays will begin to see. Seeing is not with physical eyes, but through discernment. When your attention is gathered, you begin to recognize patterns you once thought were random. You begin to understand why certain doors closed, why certain relationships could not continue, why the inner promptings within you refused to fall silent. Focused attention reveals the meaning hidden beneath the surface of life. When you truly hear, you are no longer untouched. This is why many fear awakening, even if they cannot name that fear. Awakening does not only bring light, it brings responsibility. Once you recognize something is true, you cannot continue living as though you never knew. No one forces you to act immediately, but your soul will no longer be at peace if you pretend you did not hear. This is not condemnation, it is conscience awakened. Scripture says in Romans 1:3-1:1, "The hour has come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed." This is not about time on a clock, it speaks of an inner state. There is a moment when your soul must awaken not to fear, but to enter maturity. To wake up does not mean you know everything, it means you know you cannot continue to sleep. My beloved child, when I restore your attention, I do not take away your freedom. On the contrary, I return to you your true power of choice. For when you live unconsciously, you merely react, driven by habit and circumstance. But when you are present, you begin to choose to stay, to listen, to not rush, to not turn away from what is opening before you. And each such choice places you more deeply within the trajectory I have set for you. If you sense that you are being drawn into a quieter, a deeper state, where you no longer want to skim past life as you once did, do not be afraid. This is not stagnation, it is a gathering. Your soul is being called back to a central point, and from that center, many things will begin to be rearranged. Not immediately, not noisily, but with certainty. Let your attention return, not to familiar anxieties, but to what is alive within you right now. I do not need you to understand everything. I only ask that you do not turn away too soon. For when you remain long enough, you will realize that I am not only speaking to you, I am preparing you for what you are about to carry. And from the moment you truly hear, you will know that your life no longer belongs to you alone. My beloved child, there are words that do not come to explain everything, but to realign the direction of your entire life. People often want me to speak clearly and completely, step by step, as if life were a map that must be fully drawn before they dare to move. But I do not work that way. If I were to give you every answer from the beginning, you would no longer learn to trust, nor would you have room to grow. A true word does not make you know everything, it places you in the right position. And when you stand in the right position, what you need to know will be revealed in due time. A word from heaven rarely looks like a detailed checklist. It is more like a compass needle suddenly swinging north after years of wandering in circles without realizing it. For a while, everything around you may remain the same: your work, your family, your circumstances, even your unanswered questions. Yet inwardly, something has changed forever. You are no longer moving unconsciously. From that moment on, you live with the awareness that your life has an axis, a direction, a meaning deeper than what the eye can see. And that axis will determine every turn ahead, even when you cannot yet see them clearly. You must understand the difference between being inspired and being revealed to. Inspiration often stirs the emotions. It energizes you briefly, makes you want to change immediately. But if it stops there, inspiration fades when pressure returns. Revelation is different. Revelation does not hurry. It does not necessarily make you feel exhilarated. Sometimes it quiets you, even weighs on your heart. Yet it carries a strange certainty, a deep inner knowing that does not need argument or proof. When you are given revelation, you do not merely feel something, you recognize something about who you are and about how heaven is at work in your life. My child, inspiration may come from many sources, but revelation always draws you closer to me. Inspiration makes you want to act. Revelation transforms your identity. And when identity changes, action follows naturally. That is why many people do many good things and still feel lost. They were inspired to do, but never revealed to become. A true word does not first tell you what to do, it tells you who you are. From there, what you do will gradually be put in order. A word also does not come to comfort you in an easy, pleasant sense. On the contrary, it often makes it impossible for you to return to your former state. After you have heard, choices that once felt fine no longer fit, not because they are wrong, but because your inner position has shifted. You begin to feel a new tension, the tension between the life you are living and the life you know you are called to live. And that tension is the engine of growth. Without it, you would settle. Without it, you would live well, but not rightly. Scripture says in Psalm 119:105, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." Notice this. It does not say the light illuminates the entire road from beginning to end. It is only enough to light the next step. The lamp does not erase the distant darkness. It simply ensures that you do not stumble where you are standing. And that is enough. God does not lead you by making you see everything, but by giving you enough trust to take the next step. From the moment you truly receive a word, your life is no longer a series of disconnected events. Encounters begin to carry meaning. Delays no longer feel entirely senseless. Even disappointments start to find their place within a larger picture. You may not immediately understand why this happened, why that door closed, why you must wait longer than others. But you know one thing, everything is moving somewhere, and that knowing holds you steady, even when your emotions waver. My beloved child, this is the point to which many people want to turn back, not because they dislike what I am saying, but because they realize that from here on, they can no longer live as superficially as before. A true word spoken to you gives rise to a new kind of responsibility, the responsibility to live with awareness. You can no longer place all the blame on circumstances, on others, or on the past. You begin to see yourself as a companion with me in the story of your own life, rather than merely a victim of events. And that realization is both frightening and full of hope. Hear me clearly from this moment on. Nothing that follows is random. That does not mean everything will be easy or immediately clear, but it does mean that you are no longer lost. Even when you move slowly, even when you stumble, you are still on a path that has order, and I am there, not standing at the end waiting for you to arrive, but walking with you through every small stretch, every quiet decision, every time you choose faithfulness over convenience. If you sense that an invisible thread is beginning to reconnect the fragments of your life that once seemed scattered, that is not imagination. It is the sign of a story opening before you. You may not yet be able to read all its chapters, but you have been placed into the right book, and from here onward, every step you take, every time you choose to stay, every moment you listen instead of skimming past, will help write that story forward not by chance, but according to the rhythm of the one who called your name before you could even call your own. My beloved child, I want you to lay down from the very beginning a misunderstanding that has quietly bound many souls. My choosing is not a medal. It is not a reward given to those who are better, more correct, or more spiritual than others. If you carry the thought that being chosen means you must be perfect, superior, or cleaner than others, you will either become proud or fall into despair, and both paths lead you away from the truth. I do not call you so that you may compare yourself with others. I call you to stand in the position I have appointed, a position with authority. Yes, but also responsibility, with grace, but also discipline, with elevation, but not so that you may look down on anyone. Hear this clearly: being chosen does not mean you are better. Being chosen simply means that I have placed my hand upon you in a particular way, for a particular purpose, at a particular time. If I choose you, it is not because you have no cracks, but because I know I can pour my light through those very cracks. I am not limited by your history. I am not hindered by your shortcomings, nor am I persuaded by your moral performance. People choose by outward appearance. I choose by what I have placed within. And what I place within you is often sown long before you are old enough to understand what it is. There are those who live for many years with a strange inner tension, feeling that they do not fully belong, yet cannot leave, sensing lack, yet also a driving pull, wanting to hide, yet feeling summoned. My child, this is often not disorder, it is a mark. For my choosing does not always come with confidence, often it comes with confusion. Not because I confuse you, but because when a seed meant for another season is planted in the present environment, it will always feel out of place. You are like a vessel made for oil, yet you have tried to hold what is not oil, and so you feel heavy, tired, overflowing, and empty all at once. That is the sign of living below your design. There is another belief I must break within you, the idea that family history has veto power over calling. You may have been born into a tangled lineage. You may have grown up in an atmosphere where life was misnamed. You may carry memories of cycles, habits, broken promises, distorted beliefs, and generational patterns. But, my child, I do not need the permission of the past to place a future upon you. I do not wait for the consent of a family record to open a new path. My decision is sovereign. When I speak, it goes before every other voice. When I call, it is stronger than every label. My choosing is like light entering a dark room. Light does not ask darkness whether it agrees to leave. Light simply appears, and darkness must retreat. You may have thought, this is just how my family is. This is just how my lineage is. I will be the same. But I say to you, I did not create you to be a replica of what has not yet been healed. I created you to be the evidence that I can begin again with one person, right in the middle of a history that seemed permanently framed. And this is the point many people fail to understand. I often choose you before you have language to name yourself. You do not yet know how to distinguish intuition from anxiety, longing from ambition, calling from noise. You do not yet know how to articulate I am different in words. You only sense, vaguely, that something within you refuses to be at rest. Many people, lacking language, turn against themselves. I must be difficult. I must be strange. I must be unreasonable. But my child, there are things within you that are not flaws, but signals. You do not need to understand everything for me to begin. I only ask that you do not rush to deny what is stirring within you. Scripture records in Jeremiah 1:5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Look at this verse as a key. Knowing and setting apart happened even before you appeared. This means your calling did not begin when you reached a certain moral standard. It did not begin when you became worthy. It began with me, with my eternal intention. This does not make you proud. It humbles you. For you cannot take credit for what you did not create. My beloved child, if, as you hear this, your heart feels both comforted and illuminated, that is a sign that a layer of false assumptions is falling away. I do not speak this so that you would consider yourself special in a way that separates you from others. I speak so that you would stop tormenting yourself for not being good enough. Some believe they must fix every flaw before daring to come near me. But I tell you, it is in coming near to me that I do the fixing. Selection does not come after perfection. Selection opens a process through which I shape you back into your original design. You also need to understand this: being chosen does not exempt you from mistakes. It only changes how I deal with them. When you belong to me, I do not ignore what is misaligned. I correct it. I do not overlook weakness. I lift it up. I do not cut you off because you are immature. I train you toward maturity. Selection is my commitment that I will not let you remain forever in a half-formed version of yourself. I will continue to call, continue to remind, continue to draw you back into your rightful place, not through humiliation, but through disciplined love. And my child, precisely because selection is not based on performance, it is also not canceled by a season of failure. You may have stumbled, wandered, passed through seasons where you did not understand yourself, but I have never been confused about you. What confuses you does not confuse me. What you call I have messed up, I call I will redeem. What you call a stain, I call a place where I will pour grace and bring transformation. You may lose time, but you do not lose my hand. You may lose direction, but you do not lose eternal intention. Let this be sealed within you. I chose you not because you had achieved, but because I had determined. And when I determine, I also supply the grace for you to walk it out. Do not see selection as a title you must defend. See it as a fire. You are called to guard a fire that will light your path and also burn away what no longer belongs to you. From this point on, you do not need to live to prove your worthiness. You only need to live in response. And the first response is always simple: remain with me, so that I may teach you to name rightly what I placed within you before you ever knew who you were. My beloved child, selection does not enter your life as a clear proclamation from the beginning. It leaves traces. These traces appear very early, before you are mature enough to understand what you are carrying, and before the world has language to name you rightly. For many years, you feel only the effects of being set apart without understanding the cause. Those early traces rarely take beautiful forms. They often come as questions rather than answers. You wonder why you feel deeper, heavier, more sensitive, or quieter than others. You notice that what satisfies others quickly cannot reach the deeper layers within you. Conversations that seem harmless can leave you inexplicably tired. Choices considered normal stir unease in your spirit. And when you try to explain these sensations, others look at you as though you are complicating things unnecessarily. My child, it is not because you are difficult to understand. It is because you are listening at a depth they have not yet needed to access. Being set apart does not always show itself as emotional sensitivity. Sometimes it shows itself as a very subtle sense of being out of sync. You stand among the crowd, yet find yourself observing more than participating. You listen, but you do not fully blend in. You understand the rules of the game, but you do not feel that you belong to the game itself. This can cause you to question yourself. Am I arrogant? Am I unreasonable? But my child, arrogance always seeks to elevate itself above others, while being set apart simply cannot pretend to be the same as others. You do not stand higher, you stand in a different place. There are other signs, even more subtle than the ones you noticed before. You often carried an inner sense of responsibility far earlier than your actual age. As a child, you paid attention to things adults overlooked. You could sense the atmosphere of a room before anyone spoke. You perceived unspoken tension, hidden sorrow, or instability quietly simmering beneath the surface. This was not so that you would judge, but so that you would carry a sensitivity necessary for a role that would come later. Yet because no one explained this to you, you learned to make yourself smaller, or to conceal that capacity just to stay at peace. You did not realize that you were trying to live beneath your original design. My beloved child, the early marks of being set apart are often misunderstood as personality flaws. People label you hard to fit in, too sensitive, overthinking, unrealistic, and when those labels are repeated long enough, you begin to call yourself by those names. But I say to you, you were not created to dissolve into every environment. You were created to discern, and discernment always unsettles places that have grown comfortable with shallowness. I want you to understand something important. Being set apart does not isolate you. It simply means you require a different kind of connection. You are not seeking quantity, you are seeking depth. You do not need many voices around you. You need voices that resonate at the right frequency. That is why, in the early stages, you often felt lonely, even when you were not alone. Not because you lacked people, but because your soul had not yet found a place where it was called by its true name. And that loneliness was not a punishment, it was a quiet space, so that you would not be shaped incorrectly before being shaped rightly. Scripture says in Psalm 139:16, "Your eyes saw my unformed substance. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." This means that even in the years when you did not understand yourself, I understood you. Even in the seasons when you saw only disorientation, I saw structure. The traits you considered inconvenient, I regarded as foundations. The sensitivities that exhausted you, I regarded as signals. You do not need to explain everything yet. You only need to stop condemning yourself for what I placed within you intentionally. My child, there is a reason you cannot pretend for very long. You may try, and you may succeed for a time, but eventually you grow weary, because being set apart does not allow you to live two lives, one outward life to please others, and one inner life left neglected. Your prolonged exhaustion does not come from doing too much, but from living out of position, and I allow that weariness to linger just long enough to lead you to seek what is deeper, rather than what is merely comfortable. Those early marks were never a sentence condemning you to a difficult life. They were an invitation, revealing that you were created for a different kind of influence. But before you can step into that influence, you must be freed from the fear that says, "Something is wrong with me." You were not created to be normal by the shallow standards of the world. You were created to be faithful to what I have placed within you. And that faithfulness requires learning how to stand firmly in your difference without becoming defensive or needing to justify yourself. My beloved child, if, as you read these words, you realize that for many years you have been trying to adjust yourself to fit the mold, let me speak gently to you. You do not need to fix what I designed. You only need to learn how to use it in the right place. The early signs of being set apart were not manufacturing defects. They were initial instructions. And from here, as you begin to look back on your past with new eyes, you will see that many things that once confused you were actually lining up, waiting to become meaning. I am not rushing you into your final position. Step by step, I am helping you recognize what has always been there. When you stop resisting your difference, you will begin to hear more clearly the calling beneath it. And when you hear it clearly, you will no longer need to ask, "Why am I like this?" You will begin to ask a better question: "What is this preparing me for?" And that is the moment when being set apart ceases to feel like a burden and begins to become a key. My beloved child, there is a paradox. Few speak about those who are chosen are often the ones who misunderstand themselves the longest. Not because they are slow, and not because they lack awareness, but because they grow up in environments that lack the language to correctly name what I have placed within them. When a seed meant for a deep forest is planted in dry soil, it will wonder why it is unlike the plants around it. It does not know that the issue lies not in its nature, but in the frame of reference used to measure it. And you are the same. In the early years, you learned to see yourself through the eyes of others. You heard them call your name, evaluate you, and define you according to the standards they were accustomed to using. And because you had no other frame of reference, you believed them. You began to think that your difference was a deficiency, that your sensitivity was weakness, that your inability to blend in was a social failure. You tried to reshape yourself to fit the mold, to soften the sharp edges within so that you could have some peace. But, my child, the more you tried to fix yourself, the more exhausted you became, the more you tried to dissolve into the crowd, the more you felt yourself disappearing. That was a clear sign that you were trying to read yourself using the wrong map. Those who are chosen often misunderstand themselves because they live through a season without language. You sense many things, yet you do not know how to name what you feel. You carry a strong intuition, but you cannot distinguish it from anxiety. You experience deep inner stirrings, but you do not know whether they are a calling or merely personal desire. And because there is no guide, you begin to interpret yourself alone. You conclude that you are too much, unstable, difficult, or not practical enough. But I tell you this, that confusion is not evidence that you are wrong. It is evidence that you are growing faster than the language around you. There is another reason why the chosen often misread themselves. They are placed into ill-fitting roles from a very early age. You are asked to adapt, to endure, to carry burdens, to yield, not because you are weak, but because you are capable. Yet when capability is misused, it becomes a weight. When you are constantly the one who keeps things stable for others, you learn to neglect your own needs. When you are always the understanding one, you slowly begin to believe that your emotions do not matter. And from there, you lose the ability to read yourself honestly. You no longer know which voice is truly yours and which is a role you have rehearsed for too long. My beloved child, an environment that cannot recognize you will unintentionally distort the way you see yourself. Not because it is malicious, but because it lacks the eyes to see what I have planted. You cannot expect a place that has never gone deep to understand your depth. Yet because you did not know this, you turned the blade inward. You tried to be less, lighter, simpler, hoping that you would finally be accepted. You did not realize that each time you did this, you were moving against the very process I was carrying out in you. I want you to hear this clearly. Misunderstanding yourself in the early stages does not ruin the calling. It only makes the process longer, and I am not alarmed by that. I know you will pass through cycles of doubt, comparison, self-blame, even self-denial. I know there will be seasons when you misname the calling as a problem, call sensitivity a burden, and label difference as a flaw. But I also know that there will come a moment when the light is strong enough for you to look back and understand this truth. You were not wrong. You were simply not illuminated in the right way yet. Scripture says in 1 Corinthians 1:3-1-2, "For now we see through a glass, dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know fully. This is not only a statement about eternal life, it is also an accurate description of the journey of spiritual maturity. There are seasons when you see yourself only through a dim mirror, an image distorted, incomplete, and easily misunderstood. But a dim mirror is not the final truth. It is merely a transitional stage before full understanding arrives. My child, I do not blame you for having misunderstood yourself. I am not surprised by the choices you made when you did not yet have enough light. What matters to me is whether you are willing to update the way you see yourself when the light does come. Many remain stuck not because they once misunderstood, but because they refuse to change their understanding when truth is revealed. But if you are reading these words now and feel a loosening within, as though a layer of accusation is falling away, that is a sign you are ready to look at yourself through my eyes, not through the labels of the past. I also want you to know that I do not rush to correct you by giving you a title too early. If I were to name you before your foundations were formed, you would either run from it or misuse it. So I allow you to pass through seasons of misunderstanding in order to learn humility, patience, and the capacity to listen. When you have once not understood yourself, you will be slower to judge others when they are also struggling. When you have once been mislabeled, you will be more careful in how you name another person's soul, and that very care prepares you for a kind of influence that does not wound. My beloved child, there will come a time when I teach you to reread the story of your life in a new order. Pieces that once seemed scattered will begin to fit together. Things that once made you ashamed will become clues. Seasons you thought were times of being lost will reveal themselves as necessary detours. And you will realize this even when you misunderstood yourself. I never misunderstood you, even when you called yourself by the wrong name. I called you by the right one, even when you temporarily lived below the design. That design was never erased. Therefore, do not be afraid when you look back and realize that there was a time when you did not know who you were. That does not make you late. It makes you ripe. And when you begin to understand yourself the way I understand you, you will no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. You will walk with a new calmness, not because you have become perfect, but because you have been restored to your rightful place. From this point on, you will no longer read your life through bewildered eyes, but through the light of awareness. And from that very foundation, the next parts of the story will begin to unfold no longer vague, no longer random, but in perfect rhythm with the one who called you even when you did not yet know who you were. My beloved child, there is something I want you to understand correctly, because for many years you have assigned yourself a name that never belonged to you. You are not someone who is too emotional. You are not weak because you feel deeply. What is happening has nothing to do with the amount of emotion, but with the depth of reception that I placed within you. You do not live on the surface of reality as many others do. You go straight to the core. And when you touch the core of a situation, of a person, of an atmosphere, of words spoken, you do not merely know, you absorb. That is why you feel heavy where others only skim past. Those who are chosen do not react more, they absorb more. Reaction happens on the surface. A stimulus touches emotion. Emotion erupts, then fades. Absorption is different. When you enter a room, you do not only hear what people say, you sense what remains unsaid. When you face a situation, you do not only see the event, you feel the motives, the tensions, the history behind it. When someone laughs, you can hear the weariness beneath that laughter. When someone is silent, you do not see emptiness. You perceive a fullness of things being compressed and withheld. This is not your imagination. It is the way your perceptual system was designed. But because the world is accustomed to operating at a fast pace and on shallow levels, your depth is often misunderstood. People say you overthink, that you are too sensitive, that you make things harder for yourself. They do not realize that you are not adding anything to reality. You simply cannot ignore what is already there. You do not create depth, you recognize it. And when someone designed for depth is placed in an environment that only knows how to skim the surface, exhaustion is inevitable. Not because you are weak, but because you are processing many layers of information at the same time. My child, this is why you grow tired more quickly in environments that are out of rhythm with you. Not because you lack endurance, but because your soul is constantly filtering. You filter words to find truth. You filter behavior to understand motive. You filter atmospheres to keep yourself from being swept into what is false. While others receive one layer of information, you receive 3, 4, sometimes 5 layers at once. You do not only hear what people say to you, you hear what they are saying to themselves. You do not only sense what is happening, you sense what is being concealed. And all of this consumes inner energy. There are places that exhaust you not because of workload, but because of mismatched frequency, places where words do not align with actions, where people smile without honesty, where competition is labeled motivation and manipulation is called skillfulness. Your soul was not created to adapt long-term to such atmospheres. It may endure for a season, but eventually it will speak through exhaustion, through unexplained discouragement, through a desire to withdraw. This is not a sign for you to condemn yourself. It is a signal for you to discern. I want you to understand this clearly. Your fatigue is not always a sign that you need rest. Sometimes it is a sign that you need to leave a rhythm that does not belong to you. Resting in a misaligned environment may restore you temporarily, but it will not address the root. Your soul needs space where its depth is not treated as excess, where its silence is not mistaken for distance, where its presence is not forced to become loud in order to be acknowledged. When you are in the right rhythm, you can do more with less effort. When you are in the wrong rhythm, you do little but become utterly depleted. Beloved child, there is a reason why I did not create everyone with the same capacity for perception. The world needs those who can move quickly on the surface, but heaven needs those who can stand still in the depths. The chosen are often entrusted with the task of guarding truth, preserving life, and recognizing distortion before it turns into catastrophe. To do that, they must feel more than average, and the cost of that capacity is exhaustion when they are in the wrong place. Yet that very same capacity becomes their greatest source of strength when they are in the right place. Scripture says in Proverbs 20:27, "The spirit of a person is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the inner depths of the heart." Listen carefully, not everyone is entrusted with a lamp that shines so deeply. Some souls are designed to illuminate the surface, and some souls are assigned to shine into hidden corners. If you are one who feels deeply, it means I have placed within you a lamp not meant for places already bright, but for places that need light. But a powerful lamp will overheat if placed in the wrong environment, and it will radiate if set in the right one. Beloved, I am not calling you to learn how to feel less in order to survive. I am calling you to learn how to steward your depth. Not every place requires you to open your full capacity of perception. Not everyone has the right to enter your inner depths. Not every conversation requires you to go all the way down. The wisdom of the chosen is not found in being fully open at all times, but in knowing when to open, to whom to open, and where to open. When you learn this, your sensitivity will no longer be a burden, it will become an instrument. I also want you to stop comparing yourself with those who seem lighter than you. They are not wrong, and neither are you. You have been assigned different portions of work. You do not need to learn how to live like them. You need to learn how to live in rhythm with who you are. When you accept that your depth is a design, not a problem, you will begin placing yourself in more fitting environments, more resonant relationships, and rhythms of life that no longer erode your soul day by day. Beloved child, if you feel lighter as you read this, it is not because I am merely comforting you. It is because a truth has been restored to its proper place. You are not tired because you are weak. You are tired because you have walked too long in environments not meant for the depth I placed within you. And when you begin to honor how you were created, you will stop forcing yourself to run at other people's pace. You will begin choosing where to stay, where to withdraw, and where to invest your presence from here on. Remember this: the world does not need you to become shallow in order to be accepted. The world needs you to keep your depth without losing yourself. And I will teach you how to do that step by step, through small acts of discernment, so that your capacity to perceive will no longer be the source of your exhaustion, but the source of life, for you and for those I will place along your path. My beloved child, there is a gift I placed within you that you once tried to deny. Because it made you different and sometimes made you weary, you hear what has not been spoken. You do not receive words only with your ears, you receive intention with your soul. When others hear sentences, you hear the spaces between them. When others focus on behavior, you sense the motive behind that behavior. You do not seek out secrets, but truth finds its way to you, because your inner structure was designed to recognize it. This is not imagination, nor is it excessive suspicion. It is the ability to read the atmosphere without needing explanation. You enter a room and immediately know whether it carries tension or peace, honesty or concealment, unity or division. Sometimes you cannot explain why you know, but you know. And it is precisely this knowing without being able to explain that once made you doubt yourself. You wondered whether you were judging, whether you were projecting, but, beloved, judgment seeks to conclude about people. Your gift seeks only to recognize truth in order to protect life. The chosen are often uncomfortable with vague things labeled as fine. You do not easily accept half answers, empty reassurance, or compromises wrapped in pleasant language, not because you are difficult, but because your soul is programmed to detect misalignment. When words do not match life, you feel uneasy. When a smile is not accompanied by truth, your heart grows heavy. When people agree too quickly to avoid conflict, you sense the price that will be paid later. You are not trying to cause trouble. You simply cannot pretend not to see what you have already seen. Because of this, you are often misunderstood. Some say you are suspicious, difficult, or overly critical. Some feel uncomfortable around you, even though you have not spoken a word, not because you radiate condemnation, but because your presence forces truth closer to the surface. Light does not need to speak loudly to unsettle darkness. Simply by being there, what has been hidden begins to take shape, and not everyone is ready to face that. My beloved child, I did not give you this ability so that you would control or expose others. I gave it to you so that you would protect what is holy. You were created to recognize deviation while it is still small, before it grows into great destruction. You were entrusted with sensing fractures while they are still only a faint vibration, before they become complete collapse. But because you were never taught how to use this gift, you have carried it as a burden rather than as an instrument. You have held too much within your heart, because you feared that if you spoke, you would be seen as someone who causes division. I want you to learn something important. Discernment does not mean that you must speak immediately. Not everything you see needs to be spoken. Not every place is safe for the truth. The wisdom of the chosen does not lie in knowing, but in knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. There are truths I show you so that you may pray, not so that you may intervene. There are things I allow you to sense so that you may withdraw, not so that you may confront. And there are moments when I will give you clear confirmation that it is time to speak, not with anger, but with clarity and peace. Scripture says in Amos 3:7, "Surely the Lord God does nothing unless he reveals his plan to his servants the prophets." This does not mean that everyone must become a prophet by title, but it reveals a principle God often makes known in advance, the things that must be protected. There are souls placed in positions to hear early, feel early, and know early, not so they may exalt themselves, but so they may become gatekeepers for life. If you are someone who often senses what has not yet been spoken, it is because I have placed you in such a role, even if you have never named it, my beloved child. This ability also explains why you become easily exhausted in environments where people are not honest with themselves. When pretense becomes a habit, your soul must constantly strain to remain uninfected. You do not only endure words, you endure the contradiction between words and reality. And that contradiction tires you more quickly than any heavy labor. This is why you need frequent stillness, spaces where you do not have to read multiple layers, where you can simply be without analyzing. I want you to stop blaming yourself for feeling too much. Instead, learn to set boundaries for your gift. You do not need to open all your senses everywhere. You do not need to carry everything you perceive into your heart. There are spiritual insights I show you so that you may lay them before me, not so that you carry them all day long. When you learn to return to me what I allow you to see, the burden will grow lighter, and the gift will become purer. My child, there is a very thin, yet very important difference between a discerner and a doubter. A doubter looks for evidence to reinforce fear. A discerner seeks truth to protect life. When you begin to operate your gift from love rather than defensiveness, from peace rather than anxiety, you will find that the ability to hear what has not been spoken no longer isolates you. Instead, it will make you someone who brings safety, because those who truly desire to live in the light will feel understood in your presence. From here, I want you to look back on your journey with new eyes. The times you sensed that something was not right and chose to step back, you were not cowardly, you were wise. The times you remained silent even though you knew more than others, you were not weak, you were preserving life. And the times you spoke, trembling yet truthful, you stepped forward at the right moment. I do not need you to become an exposer. I need you to be faithful to what I show you, my beloved child. When you learn to trust your gift of discernment without allowing it to become a burden, you will begin to notice a clear difference. You will grow less weary. Your discernment will become sharper, and your peace will deepen. From that foundation, you will be ready for the next part of the journey, where discernment not only protects you, but also becomes a bridge that helps others step from darkness into light, not through force, but through the truthful presence you carry, my beloved child. There is a cost that comes with seeing clearly, one that few speak about. You must carry the weight of awareness earlier than others. When light arrives sooner, responsibility arrives sooner. You do not only see what is happening, you see what will happen if everything continues along its present course. You do not only hear the story being told, you hear the story being avoided. And because you see early, you ache early, because you know early. You grow heavy early. That is why, at times, you feel older than your years, more tired than those in similar circumstances, and lonely, even in the middle of crowded conversations. This burden does not come from pessimism. It comes from honesty. You cannot deceive yourself when the truth is already standing right in front of you. While others may find temporary comfort in explanations that sound pleasant, your soul does not accept patched-together answers. You are not someone who ruins the atmosphere. You simply cannot build peace on a false foundation. And because of this, there are moments when you must carry what you see alone, because if you speak too early, you will be labeled negative. If you remain silent for too long, you will be eroded from within. My child, seeing clearly does not mean you are given the authority to fix everything. This is where many who carry a gift like yours have become exhausted. They assume that because they can see the problem, they must become the solution. But I did not place you in other people's lives for you to shoulder responsibilities they themselves must learn to face. I allow you to see, so that you may discern where you are to remain, where you are to withdraw, where you are to pray, and where you are to wait. Not everything you see requires your action. Some things only require that you do not step into them. Your deepest fatigue does not come from sensing, but from carrying what was never assigned to you. When you are in an environment that is out of rhythm, you are not merely enduring noise, you are enduring contradiction. You must constantly adjust yourself so as not to speak what you know, must pretend everything is normal while your soul is sounding alarms. That prolonged self-suppression drains you faster than any physical labor. And if you do not learn to listen to those signals, you will confuse calling with self-destruction. I want you to understand this clearly. The burden of seeing is not a punishment. It is part of your preparation. You are being trained to carry a quiet authority, an authority born of truth that has been tested in silence. Those who have never had to hold what they know tend to speak too soon. Those who have learned to wait know how to speak at the right time. And the right time is not measured by emotional urgency, but by the confirmation of peace. When you speak from peace, your words carry weight. When you act from peace, your presence restores order around you. Scripture says in Ecclesiastes 3:7, there is a time to be silent and a time to speak. This is not an encouragement toward silence out of fear. It is an invitation into the wisdom of rhythm. The chosen ones do not speak at all times, but when they speak at the appointed moment. They do not act in haste, but when they move with clarity. Seeing clearly teaches you this lesson earlier than most. Timing is part of truth. Truth spoken at the wrong time can wound. Truth spoken at the right time can heal. My beloved child, there are seasons when I allow you to see much but do little. This is not because I do not trust you, but because I am teaching you how to place what you see before me. When you learn to return to me the things you discern, the burden will no longer weigh on your shoulders. You will no longer need to hold order together for an entire room. You will no longer need to strain yourself to support what is out of alignment. You do your part, remain in truth. Keep your heart upright, and refuse to compromise with what you know is wrong. The rest, I will do. A subtle transformation takes place when you learn to carry this burden rightly. You no longer exhaust yourself by propping things up. You become steady because you are rooted. You are no longer pulled into every argument. You begin to choose your battles. You no longer need to prove that you are right. Truth creates its own witnesses over time. And in that moment, you will realize that seeing clearly is no longer a source of pain, but a source of direction. You know where to invest your presence, where to withdraw, and where to wait until the door opens on its own. My child, there will be people who do not like being near you because you see clearly. Do not be surprised. Light is not hated because it is evil. It is hated because it exposes. But there will also be those who are drawn to you because they are weary of pretending. They will feel safe around you not because you have all the answers, but because you do not evade the truth. That is when you will understand that the burden you once carried is being transformed into a refuge for others, not by fixing them, but by being honestly present. I do not call you to carry the sorrow of the entire world. I call you to hold light without letting it burn you. When you honor your limits, when you learn to rest in me rather than in avoidance, the burden of seeing clearly becomes lighter, not because you see less, but because you see from the right position. And from that place, you will move forward with a new calm, not naive, yet not bitter, not indifferent, yet not depleted. My beloved child, remember this, as you step into the next parts of your journey, seeing clearly does not mean you must carry everything alone. It teaches you how to place what you see in the right place. And when it is rightly placed, clarity is no longer a burden, it becomes a path. From here on, your steps will no longer be driven by reaction, but by discernment. And that is precisely what will prepare you for the next level of maturity, where clear sight not only protects you, but also opens the way for life to be restored around you. According to my rhythm, my beloved child, I know there were seasons when you quietly asked yourself, why does everything have to be this hard? Why do these wounds not feel like ordinary lessons, but like cuts that go straight into my identity? You looked around and saw that others also struggled. Yet your pain seemed to carry a different weight, not loud, not dramatic, but persistent and deeply rooted. I want you to hear this clearly. Not every wound comes to destroy. There are wounds that are permitted to remain because they are doing a very specific work that nothing else could accomplish in their place. The world often teaches you that pain is a sign of error, wrong people, wrong timing, wrong choices. And sometimes that is true. But there are pains that do not come from a lack of wisdom, nor are they the consequence of personal sin. They come because you are passing through a training process that cannot be shortened. Those who are chosen are not forged by light collisions, not because I am harsh, but because I know you will need an inner strength deep enough to stand firm in the roles you will one day carry. If you were trained only by what is comfortable, you would be strong only for comfortable seasons. Let me speak this to you plainly. Yet with great love I do not take pleasure in your pain. I do not create wounds to see how much you can endure. But in a broken world, I choose to redeem pain rather than allow it to be meaningless. What the enemy intends to use to make you close in on yourself, I use to open you. What once made you fear connection, I use to teach you discernment. What caused you to doubt your worth, I use to loosen you from false foundations you had not yet recognized. There is a profound difference between pain that numbs and pain that is refined. When you have no place of refuge, pain builds walls. But when you place your pain in my hands, it does not build walls, it digs wells, deep enough to hold water in seasons of drought. Those who have never known deep pain will not understand why you can listen without judgment, why you can remain with another's sorrow without panic, why your words carry comfort without strain. They do not know that these capacities were born in long nights when you were alone with me, when there were no explanations, only presence. My beloved child, I do not deny that some wounds have caused you real loss. There are things you will never regain in the same form: innocence, effortless trust, unconditional safety. I am not asking you to pretend that this did not hurt, but I want you to understand that loss does not mean damage. Your value has not diminished because you were broken. You are being reshaped, and reshaping always comes with discomfort, even pain, because it requires releasing old forms to step into new ones. You once believed that if you were strong enough, you would not feel pain, but I am teaching you something different. If you are real enough, you will feel. And feeling does not make you weak, it makes you alive. Those who are chosen are not called to become stone. They are called to become good soil that has been turned over, torn open, and precisely because of that, is able to bear fruit. Land that has never been plowed may look undisturbed, but it cannot sustain life for long. Scripture says in Hebrews 1:2-1:1, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful later on. However, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Pay attention to the words "have been trained." Pain does not automatically produce growth. Only pain placed within a process with me bears fruit. If you try to endure it on your own, pain will harden you. But if you allow me to lead you through it, pain will make you deeper. softer, and stronger all at once. My beloved child, some wounds have taught you to discern between attention and genuine care, between promises and presence, between closeness and healthy attachment. These lessons did not come from books, they came from experience. And because of that, when you speak about boundaries, you do not speak in theory. When you speak about truth, you do not speak from a safe distance. When you speak about healing, you do not speak as an observer. You speak as one who has walked through fire without losing your heart. That was not an accident, it was preparation. I know there were moments when you wished you could have learned the lesson in a gentler way. I understand that. But trust me in this, there are things that can only be etched deeply through pressure. Not so that you would suffer endlessly, but so that you would not forget. Not so that you would live in the past, but so that you would not repeat old cycles. You are not called to carry unhealed wounds. You are called to carry memories that have been transformed into wisdom. My beloved child, if even now you still feel the echoes of old wounds, do not rush to conclude that you are not healed. There are scars that no longer hurt, yet still remind you that you were once rescued. They do not pull you backward, they keep you awake. And that wakefulness will protect you in the seasons ahead. When you are entrusted with greater responsibilities, deeper connections, and wider influence, those who have never known deep pain often fail to recognize when they are stepping into dangerous territory. You are different. You have learned how to pause, to listen, and to ask me before you move forward. I do not call you to remain in your pain. I call you to step out of it with a new depth. And from that depth, you will begin to understand that what once made you believe you were breaking apart is, in truth, becoming the foundation for the next part of your journey. You are not disqualified by your pain. You are being equipped. And in the passages that follow, you will gradually see more clearly how I use the very things you once wished to forget to open doors you never imagined you could walk through. My beloved child, there is a path that seems easier, one that many people choose when they face deep wounds, the path of emotional numbness. They lock away their feelings, narrow their inner world, and build walls around their hearts so they no longer have to feel pain. The world often calls this strength, maturity, or learning from experience. But I tell you a deeper truth. Numbness is not healing. It is paralysis in disguise. And the chosen ones are not permitted to live in that state, no matter how safe it may appear. I did not create you to become stone. I created you to be a bearer of life. And life flows only where there is softness. When you harden yourself to avoid being hurt, you also unintentionally shut down the streams I desire to flow through you to heal others. There are people who can survive by becoming numb, because their influence ends with themselves. But you are different. You are called to be a point of convergence, where my life enters the dry places of others. And a point of convergence cannot be sealed shut. You once thought that if you stopped feeling, you would stop hurting. But you have discovered the opposite when you do not allow yourself to feel. Pain does not disappear, it merely sinks deeper, waiting for another moment to resurface. And when it rises again, it is no longer a wound that can be touched and healed, but a vague pressure, a lingering exhaustion, an emptiness that is difficult to name. That is not peace. That is a soul deprived of oxygen. My beloved child, the chosen ones cannot afford to become numb, because I need your heart to remain capable of vibration, not vibration that is naive, not a heart stirred by every promise, but a heart that responds in the right place, to the right people, at the right time. A heart that has been refined through pain yet remains soft is a rare heart. It is not easily manipulated, but it is not closed. It knows how to set boundaries without turning boundaries into walls. It knows how to say no without losing the ability to love. And that is the kind of heart I trust. There is a deep paradox I want you to grasp. If you allow yourself to become numb in order to protect yourself, you will attract shallow relationships. But if you keep your heart soft with discernment, you will draw genuine connections. Numbness may make you look safe, but it also makes you difficult to reach. Softness with wisdom may appear fragile, but it creates space for real life to enter. And I need you in that place where you can receive and give without losing yourself. I know you have been hurt by trusting too soon, opening too quickly, giving too much. I do not condemn you for that, but I also do not want you to use painful experience to write rigid laws for your future. I will trust no one. I need no one. I am enough on my own. My child, independence is not the destination of the chosen. Healthy connection is what I am leading you toward. And healthy connection can exist only when you still have the capacity to feel, but have learned how to discern. Ezekiel 3:6-6 declares, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Pay attention to this. I do not give you a new heart so that it can be hardened again. I remove the heart of stone not so that you become fragile and directionless, but so that you may have a living heart, one that can feel pain, love deeply, and be moved, yet still stand firm in me. A heart of flesh is not a weak heart. It is a heart that still carries life. My beloved child, there are moments when you think that keeping your distance will make you safer. But prolonged distance does not heal. It only delays. I do not call you back into every old relationship, nor do I call you to open yourself indiscriminately. I call you to remain open with me, so that from that place you will know when to open to others. When your heart is anchored in me, you do not need to close yourself off for protection. My presence becomes your safeguard, and you can remain soft without being broken. Those who are chosen are often most afraid of being hurt again, because they feel deeply. Yet precisely because they feel deeply, they also possess the capacity to heal deeply. If you become hardened, you will block the very work I desire to do through you. I do not need you to become someone who no longer feels pain. I need you to become someone who has known pain but does not allow it to define who you are. There is a vast difference between the two. Those who have never been hurt often do not understand, but those who have been hurt and remain open carry a kind of wisdom that cannot be taught with words. My child, allow me to say this very gently. I would rather see you weep in my hands than see you smile while your heart has gone numb. I would rather see you trembling yet truthful than standing firm while hollow inside, for it is from that place of truth that I can continue my work. From the place of numbness, I can only stand outside and wait. I respect your freedom so deeply that I will never force your heart to open, but I am always inviting. When you learn to keep your heart soft without exposing yourself to every storm, you enter a new level of maturity. You no longer love in order to be accepted. You love because you are securely anchored. You no longer give in order to fill a lack. You give because you are already full. And it is precisely then that you will realize this remaining uncalloused does not make you weak. It makes you dangerous to the darkness, because the light flowing through you is no longer obstructed. My beloved child, there is a quiet yet pivotal moment in the journey of healing that not everyone recognizes the moment you stop asking, why did this happen to me, and begin asking, what is this preparing me for? That moment does not make the pain disappear instantly, but it completely changes where you stand in the story of your life. You are no longer merely someone to whom things happen. You become someone being led through a purposeful process. And it is right there that you begin to step out of the role of a victim, not by denying the pain, but by granting it a new meaning. For many years, you have grown accustomed to viewing your wounds as evidence that you were treated unjustly. misunderstood, abandoned, betrayed. That is not wrong. But if you remain there, the pain will confine you within a story that contains only the past. When you see yourself solely as a victim, you unknowingly give those wounds the authority to define your life. I do not want you to live in denial, but neither do I want you trapped in retelling the same story from the same position. There comes a time when I invite you to rise to a higher vantage point, one where you can see the entire picture, not just the cut. My child, becoming a keeper of keys does not mean forgetting the pain. It means no longer allowing pain to decide which doors must remain forever closed. The keys are forged from the very things that once locked you in betrayal, taught you discernment. Abandonment taught you the value of presence. Prolonged silence taught you the power of listening. Moments when you were not protected taught you how to become a safe place for others. These lessons do not come from books, but from lived experience. And therefore, they are not shallow. They carry weight. Let me be clear, not everyone who has been hurt becomes a keeper of keys. Only those who allow pain to be transformed can step into that role. Some hold on to pain as proof for resentment. Some wield it as a weapon for self-defense. Some use it as a shield so that no one can ever reach them again. But the keeper of keys holds pain as wisdom, not to lock doors, but to know when they should be opened. It is a very subtle distinction, yet it determines the direction of an entire life. My beloved child, you have blamed yourself for how deeply sensitive your experiences have made you. But it is precisely that refined sensitivity that allows you to recognize when a door should be opened for healing, and when it should remain closed for protection. You do not open every door, nor do you shut them all. You carry the keys, and keys always require discernment. Those who have never been hurt often open doors recklessly, because they do not know the cost of intrusion. Those who have been hurt but not healed often lock everything tight out of fear. But those who have been hurt and transformed know how to stand calmly between these two extremes. There are people who will come to you not because they believe you have all the answers, but because they feel safe in your presence. They do not need you to explain everything. They need you not to panic in the face of their pain. And you are able to do that not because you are numb, but because you have walked through your own dark places without being swallowed by them. Your presence itself speaks. This pain can be carried. It can be named. It can be healed. That is the quiet authority of one who holds the key, an authority that does not need to announce itself. Scripture says in 2 Corinthians 1:4, He comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. Read this slowly. Comfort does not stop with you. It passes through you. What I have done in you was not only so that you might survive, it was so that you might become a channel. And a channel does not boast about the water it carries. It simply allows the water to flow in the right direction. My child, there were doors in your life that once slammed shut with great pain. You did not understand why they had to close. And you stood before those doors for a long time with a sense of rejection. But now, as you look back, you begin to see that if they had not closed, you would have entered places that would have cost you yourself. Some doors close not because you are lacking, but because you are too precious to be consumed there. And when you realize this, you no longer see closed doors as punishment, but as protection. From this place, you no longer live to prove that you were wronged. You live to steward what I have placed in your hands. Your key is not power to control others. It is the ability to create space where truth and healing can coexist. You know when to stay, when to leave, when to speak, and when to remain silent. These decisions are not born of fear, but of maturity forged through testing. My beloved child, you do not need to tell your story of pain to everyone for it to have value. Its value is revealed in how you walk afterward, when you are no longer pulled back by the past, when you no longer react from old wounds, when you can stand steady in situations that once broke you, that is when you are using the key. Quietly, without display, but very real. And remember this, as you continue your journey, the one who holds the key is not always understood right away. Some will not like that you refuse to open doors under their pressure. Some will be displeased when you decline to step back into familiar cycles. But you were not called to please everyone. You were called to be faithful to the wisdom that was purchased with tears and time. When you are faithful in this way, you are not only protecting yourself, you are protecting the future seasons I am preparing. My beloved child, there are mornings when you wake up with a heaviness you cannot explain. There is no new crisis, no bad news, no clear reason in the present. Yet your soul seems to carry a weight from far away. You have asked yourself, why am I tired when everything seems fine? Why does my heart feel heavy when nothing has just happened? I know you have tried to brush it aside, to label it as fatigue, sensitivity, or imagination. But my child, there are burdens that are not born today. They are passed down quietly, through things that were never named. There are emotions you carry that do not belong to your present life. They do not arise from your choices, nor do they reflect the life you are living now. They are like echoes of unfinished decisions, of wounds that were never acknowledged, of apologies that were never spoken in your family line. You feel sadness without knowing why, anxiety without seeing a threat, guilt without remembering a fault. This is not weakness. It is a sign that you are touching a deeper layer of the story you were born to step into. Those who are chosen often carry unresolved family stories not as memories, but as weight. You do not need to know the entire history to feel its consequences. There are things that were never spoken, yet they shape how people love, how they fear, how they avoid, how they control. There are pains buried so deeply that those involved believe they are gone, when in truth they have only changed their hiding place. And sometimes, that hiding place is you, my beloved child. I do not say this to make you feel overburdened. I say it so that you will stop condemning yourself for feelings you did not create. You are not too heavy. You are not difficult. You are not overly emotional. You are sensing undercurrents that have flowed through your family for many years without release. The chosen one is often the first who is sensitive enough to feel these things, and strong enough not to turn away from them, not because you wanted this role, but because it was entrusted to you. Listen carefully as I say this to you. The fact that you carry this burden is not a punishment. It is trust. I do not place what is unhealed into fragile souls. I do not entrust complex stories to those who lack the depth to bear them. You were not chosen because you are weak. You were chosen because you have the capacity to hold without being consumed. But I do not want you to misunderstand what I am doing. I did not give you this burden so that you would carry it alone. I gave it to you so that you would open a way. There is a great difference between carrying a burden and being crushed by it. When you do not understand what you are carrying, the burden presses down on you. It drains you, irritates you, leaves you feeling hollow. But when you begin to recognize that some emotions do not belong to your present moment, you rise from the position of a victim of feelings into the position of a steward of meaning. You do not need to resolve everything immediately. You only need to stop condemning yourself. And in that very moment, the burden begins to change its form. My beloved child, those who are chosen often stand at the intersection of past and future. You look forward, yet you feel a pull from behind. You do not live in the past, but the past still tries to speak to you through emotions, through reactions, through repeating patterns. I do not allow this so that you would remain trapped. I allow it because the time has come for a cycle to be named, so it can end. What has been buried can only be healed when someone is brave enough to stop pretending it does not exist. Scripture says in Ezekiel 1:8-20, The Son shall not bear the guilt of the Father, nor the Father bear the guilt of the Son. This word does not deny generational influence. It establishes the boundary of responsibility. You do not carry the guilt of your family, but you may carry the opportunity for repetition to stop. You are not condemned by history. You are invited to become the place where history is transformed. And that requires you to look directly at feelings that have no clear name, rather than continuing to push them deeper down. My child, there were nights when you felt sadness on behalf of those who did not know how to cry. There were moments when you felt anger for those who never dared to be angry. There are empty spaces within you that you did not create, yet you tried to fill them with responsibility, with achievement, with the need to be strong. I know, and I want you to know that I am not asking you to keep living this way. This burden was not given for you to strain under it all your life. It was given so that you would learn how to set it down in the right place before me. You do not need to become the rescuer of your entire family. You do not need to fix every relationship, mend every fracture, or awaken everyone else. Your role in this season is not to do, but to recognize. When you recognize that certain emotions do not belong to your present, you begin to separate yourself from them. You stop identifying yourself with the burden, and when you no longer identify with it, you are no longer controlled by it. That is the first step toward freedom. My beloved child, I want you to stop calling your sensitivity a burden. That very sensitivity allows you to perceive what others have learned to avoid. That sensitivity makes it impossible for you to live superficially. Impossible to pretend everything is fine when something is not. And that sensitivity is the doorway through which I work deeply within you, not only to heal you, but to position you as one who opens the way for new seasons in your lineage. If you are feeling weary because of emotions whose origins are unclear, stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and begin asking, "What is being placed into my hands?" The second question does not accuse. It opens responsibility within grace. And I never assign responsibility without my presence alongside it. You are not meant to carry this burden alone. You are invited to bring it close to me, so that I may teach you how to lay it down piece by piece, at the right time, in the right place. My beloved child, this is only the beginning of understanding the burden you carry. In the passages that follow, I will show you how this burden was not meant to weigh you down, but to shape you into a turning point where the old story comes to an end and a new direction begins. You were not chosen because you endure better than others. You were chosen because you are awake enough to stop carrying what no longer needs to be carried. My beloved child, not everyone is born to walk within the main current. Some are placed at the bend where the water is compelled to change direction, even if only by a single degree. You are such a one. You do not carry the responsibility of changing everything overnight. You carry the responsibility of resetting the rhythm. And once a new rhythm is established, it will travel farther than you imagine. The river does not need to know who stood at the bend. It only needs to know that from here on, the water flows differently. There are those who believe change must come through grand actions, major decisions, or loud declarations. Yet changes that shape generations rarely begin with echoes. They begin with a very quiet choice. You choose not to repeat. You choose to pause. You choose to ask a question no one dared to ask before. You choose to say enough where silence has lasted far too long. And at that very moment, the rhythm of the entire current begins to shift. No one applauds. No one takes note. But heaven does. My child, one person can alter the rhythm of an entire current, because rhythm is not about numbers, rhythm is about patterns. When you refuse to participate in an old pattern, even one that is familiar, accepted, or justified by tradition, you create an opening in what had long been a closed structure. At first, that opening appears inconvenient. It unsettles others. It threatens those who have grown comfortable with the old rhythm. Yet it is precisely that opening that allows new air to enter. And when new air enters, life begins to breathe. Your role is not to force others to change their rhythm to match yours. Your role is to no longer move in a rhythm that is wrong. This distinction matters deeply. You do not need to persuade anyone, argue with anyone, or prove that you are right. A new rhythm is not established by words, it is established by faithful presence. When you live differently, love differently, respond differently, and set different priorities, you are sowing a seed that future generations will reap. This requires the patience to accept that you may not see the results right away. My beloved child, the establishment of boundaries is one of the most powerful generational acts you can perform, not because boundaries create distance, but because boundaries create order. When you say no to what erodes your soul, you are saying yes to a future where life is preserved. When you refuse relationships sustained by manipulation, you make room for connections built on respect. When you stop carrying responsibilities that were never yours, you teach those who come after you that they do not have to sacrifice themselves in order to be loved. Boundaries are not a betrayal of the past, they are fidelity to the future. There are things that have been accepted for far too long simply because everyone does it. It has always been this way, or there is no other option. But my child, when you stand at the bend, you are invited to question those assumptions, not to judge your ancestors, but to avoid repeating what they never had the opportunity to heal. You do not stand above them, you stand after them, and for those who will come after you. What seems small in the present produces great consequences in the future, because time amplifies every seed. A small choice repeated long enough becomes culture. A different response, held steadily, becomes a new norm. A boundary honored today becomes safety for children tomorrow. You may not see the entire chain of outcomes, but you will feel the lightness that comes from knowing something has been set back into its rightful place. Scripture says in Proverbs 4:18, "The path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, shining brighter and brighter until full day." Take notice, dawn light does not blaze all at once. It grows gradually. It requires time. But once the sun has risen, no one can deny that the day has begun. Your small choices today are the dawn light for those who will walk after you. They may never know your name, but they will walk on a path you helped illuminate. My beloved child, there will be moments when you feel alone at the bend. Those behind you do not yet see the benefit. Those ahead have not yet appeared, and you stand in between, pulled from both sides. It is a difficult position, but it is also a strategic one. Do not rush back to the old rhythm simply because the new one still feels unfamiliar. Every healthy rhythm needs time for the body to adjust. Even a river needs a stretch of distance to settle after it changes course. I know you have asked yourself, is what I am doing worth it? When no one notices, I answer you, it is worth it. Because you are doing what cannot be measured by recognition. You are laying foundations for things you may not live long enough to witness. And this is the very nature of generational influence. It does not demand immediate reward. It requires enduring faithfulness. My child, do not underestimate the small things you are choosing to do rightly. Do not dismiss the moments when you choose to listen instead of react, to choose honesty instead of convenience, to choose boundaries instead of compliance. These choices are quietly rewriting the rhythm of the current. And once the rhythm changes, the water will not return to its former course. Those who come after you will not have to wrestle with the same weight. They will begin from a higher place, lighter, clearer, brighter, not because they are stronger, but because you stood at the bend when no one else was willing. Remain in that place a little longer. Hold your boundaries with humility and peace. You do not need to push the river. You only need to stand firmly where I have placed you. The rest time and grace will accomplish. And when you look back, you will see that the small, faithful, and quiet choices of today became the turning point where an old story ended and a new direction began for many generations after you. My beloved child, when I place you at the bend of the flow, I am not thinking only of your personal relief. I am thinking of those who will no longer have to carry the burdens you have learned to lay down. The freedom I am leading you into is not a private privilege that separates you from others. It is an opening through which life can move beyond you, touching people you may never meet and never even imagine. You were not called to escape alone. You were called to make a way. There is a subtle temptation on this path, the temptation to shrink freedom into the thought, "At last, I am finished." When you begin to set boundaries, when you stop carrying what was never entrusted to you, when your soul grows lighter, you may want to close the door and say, "This is enough. The rest is not my concern." I understand that feeling. But, my child, true freedom never ends at self-preservation. True freedom opens into healthy responsibility, not to carry others for them, but to live in such a way that others can see another way of living is possible. I'm not calling you to be a hero or a savior. I am calling you to be a witness. A witness does not need to persuade. A witness only needs to live truthfully. When you no longer react from old wounds, you are teaching those around you that reaction is not destiny. When you no longer stay silent out of fear, you are teaching that truth can be spoken without destroying love. When you stop rescuing everything by sacrificing yourself, you are teaching that love does not require self-erasure. These lessons are not taught by instruction, they are transmitted through a life lived. My beloved child, understand clearly the difference between healthy responsibility and misplaced burden. Healthy responsibility does not exhaust you, it gives you direction. Misplaced burdens drain life away. Healthy responsibility guides the flow of life in the right direction. When you live in true freedom, you do not return to carrying what is old. You stand firm so that the old no longer has the power to bind those who come after you. You are not required to fix the past. You are only called to keep the past from continuing to write the future. There will be people who look at your new way of living and feel challenged, not because you have done something wrong, but because you have stopped participating in familiar cycles. Your peace will unsettle those accustomed to tension. Your boundaries will discomfort those who once relied on your self-sacrifice, and your freedom will expose chains they are not yet ready to remove. In those moments, I do not call you to return and make them comfortable. I call you to remain gentle and steady, giving them time to realize that what they are reacting to is not you, but an invitation they are not yet ready to answer. My child, generational freedom always requires patience. It does not spread by command, but by consistency. Each time you choose not to repeat an old reaction, you lay a new stone on the path. Each time you speak truth without causing harm, you open another stretch of road. Each time you leave in peace instead of staying in conflict, you demonstrate that freedom is not escape, it is discernment. These choices, repeated over time, become a new pathway for those who walk behind you. Scripture reminds us in Galatians 5:1, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free." Stand firm, then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Notice this carefully. Freedom is not only being released, freedom is also standing firm. To stand firm means not returning to old yokes disguised in new forms. It means not trading peace for false harmony. It means not calling your freedom selfish when it is lived with love and responsibility. When you stand firm in this way, you are guarding not only your own life, but also a space of freedom for others. My beloved child, I want you to stop worrying that you are abandoning someone when you choose freedom. You are not abandoning anyone. You are stopping at a boundary. And a boundary does not close the door, it simply clarifies how the door is meant to be entered. Those who are willing to step into a healthy connection will find the way. Those who only wish to maintain the old cycle will quietly withdraw. Both outcomes are true, and you are not required to fix either of them. Freedom for yourself also means learning not to pass fear on. When you refuse to let fear govern your decisions, you are breaking an invisible inheritance. When you do not teach your children or those you influence that love means enduring pain, that silence is safety, that self-sacrifice is the only way to be allowed to stay, you are planting the seeds of a different future. You do not need long sermons. Your life will speak enough. My child, there will be seasons when I ask you to step back so that your freedom is not distorted into obligation. And there will be seasons when I place you forward so that your freedom becomes a refuge for others. You will know which season is which, because peace will lead the way. When you are pulled by pressure, that is not me. When you are invited with clarity and lightness, that is a sign that I am expanding the reach of your influence. Do not fear that your freedom will make you lonely. Loneliness comes only when you abandon yourself, when you remain faithful to the freedom I have given you. New connections deeper, truer will find their way to you. Not hurried, not loud, but steady. And you will realize that what you have learned to lay down has not only lightened your own soul, but has also cleared the path for many others. My beloved child, walk forward with this freedom as one who is opening a way, not running away. Live in such a manner that your peace becomes a question for others. How can they live like this? And when that question arises, you do not need to answer immediately. Time, faithfulness, and grace will answer on your behalf. For true freedom does not need to be advertised. It spreads on its own from a life rightly aligned into lives that are searching for their way back. My beloved child of mine, there is a question you have carried for a very long time. One you have sometimes been afraid to name. Why do I keep trying to fit in, yet still feel out of place? You have tried adjusting your voice, restraining your thoughts, softening your edges, slowing down or speeding up to match the rhythm of others. You learned how to smile at the right moments, stay silent in the right places, agree when necessary so as not to be seen as different. And yet, no matter how hard you tried, the feeling of not belonging kept returning like an unending echo. I want you to hear this clearly. Your attempts at fitting in have failed not because you did not do enough, but because you were trying to blend into a mold that was never made for you. You were not designed to dissolve into every environment. You were designed to shape. When you try to fit in, your soul must compress itself, ignore warning signals, and accept what is merely acceptable, but not right. And the soul never consents to being diminished for long. It may remain quiet for a while, but eventually it will speak through weariness, through emptiness, through the feeling of living someone else's life. This is not rebellion, it is truth finding its way into the light. My beloved child, there are patterns within families, communities, and cultures that are built to preserve outward stability rather than inner life. They reward sameness and suspect difference. They call compliance wisdom and discernment disruption. Within such patterns, you cannot remain for long without losing yourself, and I will not allow you to lose yourself in order to be accepted, not because I desire your isolation, but because I desire your right placement. Discern this clearly. Not fitting in is not the same as resisting. You are not called to break every mold simply because it exists, but you are called not to let a mold define your identity. When you step into a space and feel that you must become someone else in order to stay, that is a sign you are standing before a mold that is not meant for you. And when you withdraw in peace from such places, you have not failed. You are protecting what I have placed within you. My child, there are seasons when I allow you to remain in environments that do not quite fit. so that you may learn discernment. But I never intended for you to stay there forever. What does not fit will eventually erode you. You may name it discomfort, misalignment, or unnatural. But beneath those words, it is your soul speaking. This is not a place where I can take root. Roots cannot grow in unsuitable soil, and a tree without roots will live in survival mode rather than in true growth. There is a paradox you need to understand the more you try to blend in. The further you drift from your purpose. Your purpose is not found in becoming like others, but in bringing a different perspective. When you blur your distinctiveness, you do not only impoverish your inner life, you also withhold what I intended to give that environment through you. Heaven does not need more copies. Heaven needs faithful originals. And originals often cause discomfort before they become necessary. Scripture says in Romans 1:2, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Notice this carefully. It does not call you to withdraw from the world, but to refuse being molded by it. Transformation does not happen when you dissolve into your surroundings. It happens when you stand firm in a renewed identity. When your mind is realigned, you will no longer panic over not fitting into every mold. You will begin to ask a different question: what am I called to bring here? And if the answer is not here, you will have the freedom to move on without bitterness. My beloved child, I know that not fitting in has made you doubt yourself. At times you have wondered, am I too difficult? Do I expect too much? Am I not humble enough? But hear me clearly. Humility is not self-erasure. Humility is standing in the right place without the need to perform. You do not have to prove that you are different. You only need to remain faithful to what you know is true. That faithfulness will gradually lead you to more fitting spaces, not necessarily perfect ones, but safe enough for you to be yourself. Failed assimilation happens for another reason as well. You carry a different rhythm. Your rhythm slows where listening is required and quickens where decisiveness is needed. It does not chase the crowd, yet it is not closed off. When you are forced to live by a rhythm that is not yours, you will always feel either behind or ahead, and exhausted either way. But when you find your rhythm in me, you will discover that you do not need to force belonging. Aligned connections will find you on their own. My child, I do not call you to stand outside in judgment. I call you to stand rightly and lead the way. There are people who can only recognize the distortion of a pattern when they encounter you, not because you speak against it, but because you no longer live by it. Your presence will raise questions they have never dared to ask. Whether they are ready or not, you will have completed your part. You will not have colluded with the shrinking of life. From this point on, stop treating your lack of belonging as a personal failure. See it as spiritual data. It is showing you which places are not meant for your identity, which are merely temporary stations, and which you must leave so that you are not worn down over time. I am not taking community away from you. I am refining it. I am not pushing you into loneliness. I am leading you toward right connection. My beloved child, you were not created to dissolve. You were created to stand. And when you stand long enough, you will see that the molds that once rejected you no longer have the authority to define you. You will step into new spaces, perhaps fewer people, but more real, perhaps slower, but deeper. And there, you will not need to strive to belong, because you will be living in alignment with what I placed within you from the beginning. My beloved child of mine, there is a feeling that has followed you for a long time. One you have tried to push away the feeling of not belonging. You thought it was a flaw that needed fixing, that if you tried a little harder, humbled yourself a little more, adapted just a bit further, the feeling would eventually disappear. But I want you to look at it through a different lens. The sense of not belonging is not always a sign of deficiency. Sometimes it is a guiding signal. It does not come to lead you astray, but to keep you from taking root where you were never meant to remain. There are environments that appear very right on the surface, right standards, right spoken values, right forms, right social expectations. Yet beneath all of that, their rhythm does not align with the rhythm I placed within you. When you enter such places, you may not be able to name what is wrong, but your soul begins to contract. You find yourself performing, calculating, maintaining an inner distance just to survive. That is when the feeling of not belonging emerges, not as a condemnation, but as a gentle warning. My child, if you do not belong in a place, it does not mean that the place is bad. It simply means that it is not your stopping point. Not every space is created to hold you for the long term. Some places are classrooms, some are testing grounds, and some are merely corridors meant to lead you onward. But when you try to turn a corridor into a home, you will always feel out of place. And I do not want you building a house in a place you were only called to pass through. The feeling of not belonging also arises when you remain close to relationships that no longer align with your current stage of growth. There are people who were once deeply important, intimately close, and necessary for a previous season. But as you grow, the rhythm of conversation no longer matches. Care no longer moves in the same direction, and what once connected you now feels strained. You may still love them and honor what they meant to you, yet your soul knows it no longer belongs in the old way. This is not betrayal, it is honesty. My beloved child, many remain in places where they do not belong, out of fear of loneliness, fear of loss, fear of being misunderstood as someone who has changed. Yet the cost of staying in the wrong place is always higher than the cost of leaving. Staying where you do not belong requires you to dim your light, dull your intuition, and persuade yourself that emptiness is normal. I did not create you to become accustomed to emptiness. I created you to live in true connection first with me, and then with those I place along your path. There is something important you must discern. Not belonging is not the same as not being loved. There are places where you are loved because you are useful, agreeable, or undemanding. But such love can still leave you without belonging, because it does not love your true self. Belonging happens when you do not have to hide the deepest parts of who you are in order to remain. Belonging is the freedom to be fully present without constantly reshaping yourself to fit. And if you must continually edit who you are, that is a sign you are paying with your identity. Scripture says in Hebrews 1:3-1-4, "For here we do not have an enduring city, but we seek the one to come." This verse is not only about the life to come, it speaks to the posture of those who are called. You were not created to settle permanently in every earthly system. You were formed with an inner compass that points toward what is true, what is alive, what endures. And when you remain in a place that does not reflect this, your soul will not be at rest, not so that you despise the present, but so that you do not mistake it for your destination. My beloved child, I want you to stop trying to fix the feeling of not belonging by forcing yourself to stay. Instead, begin to listen to it. Ask yourself, what is this pointing me toward? Perhaps it is telling you that you have learned what you were meant to learn here. Perhaps it is reminding you that you have outgrown this space. Perhaps it is preparing you for a transition you cannot yet see clearly. This feeling is not your enemy, it is a messenger. And messengers do not need to be chased away, they need to be heard. I also want you to understand that not belonging for a season does not mean you will never belong anywhere. There are times when I allow you to live in between, no longer belonging to the old place, but not yet arrived at the new one. This season often feels disorienting because there is nothing to cling to. Yet it is precisely in this space that I remove false identities, old labels, and expectations that no longer fit. You think you are lost. In truth, you are being repositioned. My child, Do not rush into the first place that feels comfortable simply to escape the emptiness of not belonging. Comfort is not always truth. Some places feel familiar because they repeat an old rhythm, not because they carry you forward. I do not call you back into familiar cycles to avoid discomfort. I call you to walk through the feeling of not belonging with trust, so that you do not trade direction for temporary relief. When you begin to honor the feeling of not belonging as a signal, you will stop blaming yourself for it. You will no longer assume that you are not enough. Instead, you will begin to ask, where am I being led? And that question opens space for me to act. I may lead you to smaller but deeper communities, fewer but truer relationships, quieter roles that fit you more precisely. And there, you will not have to struggle to blend in. You will be recognized. My beloved child, remember this: the feeling of not belonging is not an ending. It is a directional arrow. It is telling you that you were not created to stop here. It is reminding you that your identity is not determined by whether you fit the current mold. And when you have the courage to follow that signal, not in panic, but in peace, you will gradually discover that where you truly belong is not a place where you must strive to be allowed to stay, but a place where you are invited to be fully present. My beloved child, there comes a very important moment in your journey of maturity, the moment when you stop trying to explain why you are different. In the past, you spoke at length to be understood, bent yourself to be accepted, softened your sharp edges so others would not feel uncomfortable. But then you came to a deep realization: difference does not need justification to have value. It only needs to stand firmly in its rightful place. And when you stand long enough in what I have placed within you, that difference begins to release a kind of authority, quiet, yet impossible to ignore. Quiet authority does not come from titles, nor from being affirmed by the majority. It comes from the alignment between who you are and how you live. When you no longer adjust yourself to every gaze, every expectation, every reaction of others, your soul becomes whole, and that wholeness carries weight. People may not agree with you, but they cannot deny your presence. There is something about you that causes them to pause, even if only for a moment. My child, your difference once made you feel out of place. Yet that very difference, when anchored in me, will become a place of rest for those exhausted by having to be the same. Not everyone will come to you, but those who are seeking what is true will recognize you in a way that is difficult to explain. They feel safe near you. Even though you promise nothing, they feel seen. Even though you have not asked many questions. This is not because you are perfect, it is because you are not pretending. There is another subtle temptation. I want you to recognize the temptation to use difference as a wall of pride. When you have been wounded by not belonging, you may be tempted to define yourself by separation. I am not like them. I am different from them. I am above these things. But my child, difference is called to serve, not to elevate you above others. When difference becomes a reason to close your heart, it loses its original purpose. I did not free you from one mold so that you would build another for yourself. Quiet authority does not put difference on display, it governs it. You do not need to emphasize that you live differently. You only need to live rightly. When you no longer react as you once did, when you are no longer drawn into old cycles, when you feel no need to prove that you are right, those things speak on your behalf. And over time, others will begin to ask, why are they not shaken like that? That question opens a door that words cannot. Scripture says in Matthew 5:1-4-16, you are the light of the world, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Notice this light does not need to shout to be seen. It only needs not to be hidden. When you stop hiding your difference out of fear of rejection, the light begins to do its work, not to glorify you, but to point the way. My beloved child, There are spaces I will place you in, not so that you blend in, but so that you stabilize the atmosphere. You may not speak more than others, yet when you are present, conversations slow down. Hasty decisions begin to be reconsidered. Invisible tensions are named without confrontation. This is authority that does not come from pressure, but from inner clarity. One who carries such authority does not need to control. They create order simply by being in the right place. I know you once feared that if you did not belong, you would be pushed to the margins. But I want you to understand this: the margins are not always a position of weakness. Often, they are the place of clearest sight. And when the time comes, those who stand at the margins are often the ones who see the path that those at the center cannot. I do not keep you at the margins forever. I keep you there only long enough so that you are not swept away. When you step into the center, you will do so with discernment, not with a hunger to be noticed. My child, your difference will not always be praised. At times it will be misunderstood, labeled, perceived as cold or distant. But you are not called to make everyone comfortable. You are called to give truth a place to stand, and truth rarely makes people comfortable immediately. It awakens them. When you accept this, you will no longer be swayed by whether you are liked or not. You will begin to ask a different question: am I being faithful? Quiet authority also requires that you learn to be selective with your presence. Not every place requires you to stay long. Not every conversation requires your participation. Not every relationship requires deep investment. When you steward your presence wisely, you are not depleted. And when you are not depleted, what I have placed within you has room to grow. The chosen do not need to be everywhere. They need to be in the right place. My beloved child, there will come a time when you look back and realize that not fitting in saved you from many wrong paths. It kept you from easy compromises. It protected you from trading your identity for a false sense of peace. And precisely because you learned how to stand firm in your difference, you will become someone I can trust to step into complex spaces without being assimilated. You will not fear being misunderstood, because you have learned how to live without needing every explanation. Walk forward with your difference as one who carries a well-shielded light, not hurried, not defensive, not performative. You do not need to announce that you are different. You will be recognized when the time is right. And when that time comes, you will see that quiet authority is stronger than any forced conformity. It makes no noise, yet it shifts the direction of the room. It does not compete, yet it is invited in. And you will know that all the seasons when you felt out of place were never wasted. They were preparing you for a new way of being present, where difference is no longer a burden, but the mark of what I am doing through you, my beloved child. There is a truth you need to hear clearly. Because you have often misunderstood yourself, you are not seeking leadership, but leadership is seeking you. You do not wake up each morning with a desire to stand before others, nor do you carry ambitions to control or shape anyone's life. On the contrary, there have been seasons when you tried to avoid stepping forward, making decisions, or carrying responsibility beyond your personal scope. Yet the more you avoided it, the more you noticed that situations requiring leadership kept finding you, not because you wanted them, but because you were placed there. True leadership does not begin with the desire to be seen. It begins with the capacity to take responsibility when others step back. Many times you have been the one who stayed when everyone else left, the one who remained calm when the room was in chaos, the one who saw a way through when others saw only dead ends. You did not call that leadership. You called it there was no one else. But, my child, it is precisely in those moments of no one else that the calling was quietly being formed. Leadership is not a title that is given. It is a weight that is accepted. There is a common misunderstanding I want to dismantle. Leadership does not mean always knowing what you are doing. Many wait until they feel confident enough, ready enough, certain enough before they step forward. But those I often use step forward while being keenly aware of their own limitations. You have hesitated many times not because you lacked ability, but because you understood too well the consequences of making decisions. You do not take people lightly. You do not take influence lightly. You do not take wounds lightly. And it is precisely this carefulness that makes you trustworthy to me, my beloved child. The leadership I am forming in you is not leadership of imposition, but leadership of grounded presence. You do not need to command for others to listen. You listen deeply enough that others dare to speak. You do not need to control the process. You hold the axis so the process does not drift away from truth. You do not need to stand above. You stand in the right place. And in a world accustomed to noise, that right positioning becomes a rare anchor. You have wondered why you are often drawn into crises you did not create, why others come to you when they face hard decisions, when they are tired of shallow advice, when they no longer trust quick fixes. It is not because you have all the answers. It is because you do not panic in the presence of questions. You can remain with uncertainty longer than most. And that ability to remain is the foundation of healing leadership. Scripture says in Mark 1:3-44, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all." These words do not diminish leadership, they redefine it. Leadership is not about standing above to command, but about standing among to preserve order and life. You are not called to stand in front to receive applause. You are called to stand in the middle to carry weight that others cannot name. And that is why you have been trained through seasons of being unrecognized, misunderstood, and unrewarded. My child, there have been times when you felt weary from having to be the adult too early, the one who considers multiple sides, who stays composed when others lose direction, who speaks what is hard to hear when everyone wants to avoid it. You wished you could be more carefree, more naive, less responsible. But I want you to see this clearly. Those seasons did not steal your youth. They built depth. And depth is what true leadership always requires, not to overpower others, but to remain steady when pressure increases. Leadership does not come from always being right. It comes from being willing to take responsibility when things are not right. You do not rush to assign blame. You do not seek scapegoats. You do not disappear when consequences arise. That posture creates a sense of safety many have never known. And when you create safety, trust begins to grow not because you are strong, but because you are reliable. Reliability is the foundation of all lasting influence. My beloved child, I know there is one thing you fear, that if you step into a place of leadership, you might become what you once despised, rigid, distant, controlling. But trust me in this, you will not become what you have already been healed from. The wounds you once carried have taught you what must never be repeated. Pain has shaped you into someone who knows how to pause, how to ask, how to listen, how to apologize. These qualities do not disappear when you lead. They become the very core of how you lead. The leadership I entrust to you is not a burden to be carried for a lifetime. It is a rhythm that must be stewarded. There will be seasons when you step forward, and seasons when you step back, times when you speak, and times when you remain silent. You are not the source, you are the channel, and a channel must rest, or it will run dry. When you learn to return to me, to place the weight back at my feet, leadership will no longer exhaust you. It becomes a flow, powerful, yet ordered. My child, do not wait until you feel worthy before accepting that you are being called. Worthiness is not the prerequisite. Faithfulness is what I seek. Faithfulness in small things. Faithfulness when no one is watching. Faithfulness when there is no immediate reward. It is that faithfulness that has brought you here. And from this point on, I am not asking you to change who you are in order to become a leader. I am simply inviting you to stop resisting what I am forming. My beloved child, there will come a moment not loud as you once imagined, but unmistakably clear within your soul when you realize that you have been placed in position, not through a grand declaration, nor through collective applause,